Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome to another episode of Bhagavatam Bites. Very grateful that you can be here today. Thank you for joining in.
We're reading from Canto 4, Chapter 28, Text 53.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Text 53. The Brahmana continued, "My dear friend, even though you cannot immediately recognize me, can't you remember that in the past you had a very intimate friend? Unfortunately, you gave up my company and accepted a position as enjoyer of this material world." Prabhupada. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 7, Text 27, Icha dvesha samutena dvandva mohena bharata sarva bhutani sammoham sajya yanti parantapa. Translation. O Scion of Bharat, Arjuna, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, overcome by the dualities of desire and hate. End of translation. This is an explanation of how the living entity falls down into this material world. In the spiritual world there is no duality, nor is there hate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead expands himself into many. In order to enjoy bliss more and more, the Supreme Lord expands himself in different categories, as mentioned in the Varaha Purana. He expands himself in Vishnu Tattva, the Swamsa expansion, and in his marginal potency, the Vibhinamsa, or the living entity. These expanded living entities are innumerable, just as the minute molecules of sunshine are innumerable expansions of the sun. The Vibhinamsa expansions, the marginal potencies of the Lord, are the living entities. When the living entities desire to enjoy themselves, they develop a consciousness of duality and come to hate the service of the Lord. In this way, the living entities fall into the material world. In the Prema Vivata it is said, Krishna Bahe Mukha Hana Bhoga Vanchakare Nikata Sta Maya Tare Japatiya Dare. The natural position of the living entity is to serve the Lord in a transcendental loving attitude. When the living entity wants to become Krishna himself or imitate Krishna, he falls down into the material world. Since Krishna is the Supreme Father, his affection for the living entity is eternal. When the living entity falls down into the material world, the Supreme Lord, through his Swamsa expansion, Paramatma, keeps company with the living entity. In this way, the living entity may someday return home back to Godhead.
Bring the mic a little closer.
Bring the mic a little closer. Alright, so there you go. See, now you made me forget what I was going to say.
Well,
bring
the
mic.
That easily,
bring the mic. Bring the mic. Mic. Alright, let me see if I can remember, because I am just a Vibhinamsa, a marginal potency. Okay. Oh Lord have mercy. Alright, I don't remember it, but there was another thing, which was that just by when we understand that the Paramatma follows you from the spiritual world to the material world and stays with you, and he's in your heart and he sees everything. To be honest with you, when I first read that, I was thinking, dear Lord, that alone would make me just want to watch my thoughts and watch my actions, because who needs like your dad or your granddad or whoever looking over your shoulder and you're like thinking this or doing this. I remember thinking that. Fortunately, Paramatma covered me over, so otherwise I was quite worked up about it. That's all I can say. So you think about it, you know, if you got like CCTV on you all the time, not just that, but someone, like your dad or your grandma or someone watching you, you're like, Lord have mercy, you know, you can't do anything. You might as well just chant Hare Krishna 24 hours a day.
Well, in one sense, that's kind of the point.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
But most of us do forget
No,
that the Supersoul is always there with us and always watching. But one thing is that the Supersoul is, in one sense, he's completely non-judgmental, although he is also mandating or facilitating what we deserve, what we desire, what we get. He's the permitter, is often the term that's used, which means he must be judging on some level. But it's not that he becomes disgusted with us, like, God, you did that again. I'm not going to speak to you ever again. I'm going to shun you. He's still there. He continues to be there for us, just waiting, encouraging, speaking, so that we turn our face towards him. He may stop speaking sometimes because we just completely, blatantly ignore him, but ultimately, yeah, he's completely non-judgmental. So even though he's there watching everything that we're doing, he's not like judging us as good or bad or, wicked, in a negative sense.
That's not what I'm done. I mean, it's my days. It's like
I just made a point. I don't even know if it was related to the point you made.
It wasn't related at all.
Okay, then why are you getting worked up?
Because I'm still transcribing.
Okay. When you wake up, you let us know, okay? You can make
So the point I was going to say before I was interjected.
Interjected or interrupted?
Both is
no,
that...
you can't be interjected. Oh, Lord.
At least the Paramatma doesn't correct and speak unnecessarily. So,
Paramatma's asleep.
Oh, wow. When the living entities desire to enjoy themselves, they develop a consciousness of duality and come to hate the service of the Lord. So this is what stood out. Hate the service of the Lord, because, this point is so true. Obviously, Prabhupada said it, but it's like, that not just amongst, say, Indian people who may have some concept of who is Krishna, what is Bhakti, and all this, who may have some concept, but even those who don't, sometimes we say, as non-devotees, we know people that used to walk past, say, Govindas, or maybe go to Govindas, and then there's that, I'm not going upstairs now, or I'm not going to talk to devotees, because there was this innateness of it will be all over, you kind of knew that life will change if I make that step. And even amongst, just growing up and amongst, say, Indian family, and that it was almost just practicing Krishna consciousness was too much in your face for a lot of family members, because they knew that it's almost like an irritation, because you think, I want to enjoy, so stop showing me what is actually I know innately I should be doing, and so that's what came to my mind with this term, and come to hate the service of the Lord, because as Prabhupada says, when a living entity desires to enjoy themselves, then I'm going to hate the service. It's like if you're a devotee and you start to slip away, it's like, I don't want, you have to literally go away from the devotees, because you can't enjoy, it's like, you got to, kind of like go into your own bubble and far. You can't just be, I used to come 5 days a week and do this, but now I'm just back to boo-boo and come for the Sunday feast. It don't work like that, if you know what I mean. You just kind of know. So it's interesting. It's like you really have to detest it or turn away from it, and in that sense start to detest or turn away from those who are practicing it or propagating it, because there's that kind of innateness, that
kind of what? Some
innate knowledge which is there, because Prabhupada says we are the marginal potency of the Lord. So there is there is an understanding, whether you get it or not, because you may have been brought up in a culture or not, you just get it, that's that's kind of like where I should be or what I should be doing. It's interesting, you know?
Okay, next paragraph.
All right.
By misusing his independence, the living entity falls down from the service of the Lord and takes a position in this material world as an enjoyer. That is to say, the living entity takes his position within a material body. Wanting to take a very exalted position, the living entity instead becomes entangled in a repetition of birth and death. He selects his position as a human being, a demigod, a cat, a dog, a tree, etc. In this way, the living entity selects a body out of 8,400,000 forms and tries to satisfy himself by a variety of material enjoyment. The Supersoul, however, does not like him to do this. Consequently, the Supersoul instructs him to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord then takes charge of the living entity, but unless the living entity is uncontaminated by material desires, he cannot surrender to the Supreme Lord. But unless the living entity is uncontaminated by material desires, he cannot surrender to the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 5.29, the Lord says, Bhoktaram yagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyantvamam shantim richati. The sages, knowing me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attain peace from the pangs of material miseries. Yeah, so basically just kind of describing the fall of the jiva in one sense, that by misusing independence, we fall down from the service of the Lord, which means our original exalted position, and that position we're trying to get back to. And we may even get back to that we're situated again in service, and we can still fall down again. So fall down is something that can happen on all platforms. Of course, the great debate is, did we fall from the spiritual world or not? Were we ever there? So that's a whole nother conversation. But the principle here, it seems, Prabhupada is saying that by misusing independence, the living entity falls down from the service of the Lord and takes a position in this material world. For me, that's very clear. Prabhupada is saying that that's basically what happens. And we come here and we try to enjoy. And that whole point is we want to take an exalted position, but instead we become entangled in the repetition of birth and death in so many species. One thing that stood out to me is Prabhupada says, in this way the living entity selects a body. And I guess that's, I remember when I was a kid, before getting into any Krishna consciousness at all, but the idea of reincarnation was there. I don't know how or why or where it was taught or just understood as a common term even in Western culture. But I remember as a kid sometimes we used to say, I want to reincarnate if I could reincarnate, I'd want to be a cat or a dog or and people do that. And, you can put in the comments below that people say, I hope I reincarnate. And I remember wanting to reincarnate as a dolphin. So it's like, but it doesn't seem, when you get into the actual science of it, that it's really exactly like that. We cultivate a consciousness of a pig, of a dog, of a hog, of a cat, of a dolphin, however that may look. And Prabhupada said when he was walking on the beach in California, these people, what do you call it? He said, what are they? Sufferers? Yeah. Surfers. And he said that, they love playing in the water so much that they'll come back as fish. So like that, so it means, our consciousness is preparing. So I guess in one sense that's what it means, but it may not be my next life I want to be a demigod. But if you really desire it, then you can meditate on it and ultimately you can come to that. In the same way as they do in materialistic secular life, then people talk about, I want to be rich and famous, or I want to become, this person, a politician, and I want to do, and then they keep meditating on it and keep doing actions and activities that help to lead them in that direction, and eventually it may come to fruition like that. Anyway, a few thoughts.
Final paragraph. The Supreme Lord is the supreme friend of everyone. However, no one can take advantage of the Supreme Friend's instructions while making his own plans to become happy and entangling himself in the mode's material nature. When there is creation, the living entities take on different forms according to past desires. This means that all the species or forms of life are simultaneously created. Darwin's theory, stating that no human being existed from the beginning, but that humans evolved after many, many years, is simply a nonsensical theory. From Vedic literature, we find that the first creature within the universe is Lord Brahma, being the most intelligent personality. Lord Brahma could take charge of creating all the variety found within this material world. Yeah, I remember studying Darwin's theory at school, and yeah, sort of thinking, and just having that upbringing of some level of knowledge, Shastra, whatever, thinking, like saying to my friends, you know, you come from monkeys, like laughing. I don't come from monkeys. The friends said it was all right, but because it just came down to like, what are you talking about, you know? As Prabhupada says, it's nonsensical theory. There's nothing more to say about this nonsensical theory, and how exalted is our lineage or history, that we come from Lord Brahma, like a highly evolved, informed person, you know? Not like some blob.
That's interesting. Nice.
Or some fish, you know? Well, not even fish, a blob. And it morphs into this, and then this, and then this, and an ape-man, and this, and that, and that. It's like, dudes, you know, we started off with the highest point, and from that everything was created. And that person was created by the Supreme Person, so get over it, you know? It's like, yeah, it's interesting. It's just kind of like envy and false ego and denying, anyway, just denying fact, really.
Yeah, very interesting point. In one place, of course, well, not in one place, but Prabhupada says many times that Darwin's theory is nonsensical, we hear here, but he also says that actually, he says Darwin's theory is given in Padma Purana. But it's explained that that's the journey of the soul, not that each species becomes created physically, because they're all created simultaneously by Lord Brahma, or over some time, but basically simultaneously for us. They're all already there. It's not like they're being generated and created currently. But he said, but the transmigration of the soul through different species is a similar idea of evolution, but it's a spiritual evolution. Means that you start as a fish, aquatic life, and then move to plant life, and then move to whatever insect life, and then to well, I guess, yeah, somewhere in there would be amphibian, well, probably amphibian first, and then reptilian, and insect is in there, and, you know, eventually you get to mammal and human, so like that. So, what was the other thing? Oh yeah, I was just thinking how Prabhupada created the Bhaktivedanta Institute in order to, specifically one of their mandates was to obliterate this Darwin's theory. And there's a book, several books, but by Dhruta Karma Prabhu called Forbidden Archaeology, where they clearly show that there are so many findings and proofs that denounce that whole theory, but if they don't match the theory, the thesis that's presented, then they throw it in the bin. And so they pulled all these findings out of the bin and compiled them to show that it clearly proves the Vedic perspective and not Darwin's theory, but they keep wanting to prove Darwin's theory, so they do like that. Anyway, you can look it up. It's called Forbidden Archaeology, and then there's some other books, Dhruta Karma Prabhu. Okay, should we conclude there?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
jai.